is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering The Dark Lord of Derkholm by Diana Wynne Jones, brought to you by Patricia Bing Grant. Chapters 4 and 5. In these chapters, we get to find out a little bit more about what Derk is doing with these animals. Homie is crazy. And also, I don't know what the hell is going to happen with Snake Lady, but I like her, and I want her to wake up. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am Natasha. Thank you again to Patricia for commissioning this episode. 4 and 5, last time I did 1, 2, 3, but 4 and 5 are somewhat long chapters, so that wound up being almost exactly 50 pages. So that is what I went with. And they pick up pretty much exactly where the previous chapter left off. Derk is struggling with having had a bunch of guests over. Derk he's a little bit of a puzzle. He seems to be a bit of an introvert. He likes to have the people that he trusts and knows around him. And when those people don't seem to be the ones that he trusts and loves anymore, it's really causing him a lot of grief, which, I mean, obviously any of us, when we have somebody that we trust and it turns out we can't, it causes us grief. But I feel like his emotions are a lot closer to the surface than some people's. And he's super creative, but in this madcap, unplanned sort of way. Very experimental, which is what he calls a lot of what he does, is this was an experiment. And he's just willing to deal with whatever the fallout is going to be. That I at least respect, is that he's experimenting with all these different animals and doing some weird ass shit. But at the same time, when things go wrong, he's not like, oh, well, this wasn't what I planned. I guess I'll kill this. Or I'll hide it somewhere for nobody to ever see. The only thing that he hides are things that he's afraid someone else is going to want and then take and kind of abuse, because most of his animals are sentient in one way or another. So his hiding is not really selfish exactly. And I appreciate that he's no matter what he winds up with, it's viewed as his child in a way. And he's very willing to take care of it and take responsibility for it. So at least that's him having some maturity about all of the crazy shit he's doing. So he starts to talk to Querida, Snake Lady, who... she comes with him, and it's clear that they each have something that they want to ask the other. She has something specific that she needs to ask of him, and it's going to be a big deal, so she has to build up to it. And we never actually, in these 2 chapters, find out what it was. It's hinted that she needed to borrow or take an animal. And I do not know why. She had said for him when Chesney was there that she would summon a demon for him. I'm worried that she needs an animal to kill to summon the demon. I have no idea if that's a thing, how you summon a demon in this world or what. Oh, Patricia's saying she wants university dues. But he doesn't go to university, does he? Who are the dues for? Is it for Shona? Alumni. Oh, bullshit, man. They didn't help him at all. Ugh. Listen, I have such a sore spot regarding alumni dues and whatnot. But we won't get into that baggage. So she's hoping that an animal will cover that, I guess. Interesting. What a weird, okay, so last night I was telling Owen about this book, and, there are a few Spoil Me, books that I chat with him about frequently because I feel like they'd be of interest to him in some way. And I talked to him a lot about Fire and Hemlock because of its dealing with neglect and him going through that as a kid. And I was really not sure if, because he was so upset by some of what I told him from that book that I felt the need to bring this book up in order to be like, see, Diana Wynne Jones writes fun stuff too, babe. And he kind of cut me off as I was trying to explain the premise and was like, wait, but the people in the fantasy world get paid? And I was like, yeah. And he says, how do they get paid? What is there? Is there a money converter? Does he go to the bank? And I'm like, I don't know. Would you not focus on that right now? That's not the point. And he basically put me in such a grumpy mood because he was not hearing what I was trying to tell him that I stopped talking to him about it. And today, these chapters sort of give me the answer, one of the answers, which is that besides all of the animals that Derk is experimenting with and creating, he also gets paid in crops from the other world. So there are things like coffee, which are a big deal. He's able to pay some wizards later for repairs to his house with bags of coffee, potatoes and tomatoes. I think Carita is wondering whether or not he's growing cotton because they don't have cotton here, which I wonder what their fabric's made of mostly. Is it linen or wool? Because they have sheep. That has been mentioned. So there are a lot of little things like that I found interesting. And I'm wondering if there is money as well. Because I feel just paying in crops is not usual. When they describe the damage that the kingdom suffers when the pilgrims come over, crops does not feel like it would be enough. Patricia saying gold. Okay, so gold translates to either world. It doesn't matter. All right, well, that's a good answer. And I'm going to tell him, and I'm going to rub it in his face because he was such a cranky little bastard. He was fined 100 gold, but I wasn't sure if that was what Chesney paid him in. Does that make sense? Maybe that's their money and Chesney knows it means something to them, but that it might not work in and I wasn't sure how pure that there's a lot of sort of up in the air about how that worked in my mind. But if it's gold on both ends, I mean, gold's worth something here as well. So, Kit, by the way, is sort of in disgrace in the openings of this chapter because what he did as far as scaring Chesney, he was the one that got them fined 100 gold, which is a lot. It's enough that Derk is genuinely concerned about how he's going to pay this. And I don't know what I expected from Kit because I obviously don't know Kit as a character at all yet. But I was pleasantly surprised at the conversation that Derk has with Kit later because Kit is really remorseful. Kit is described as being a petulant teenager. And if there's anything that I think a lot of us can remember from being a teenager, it's doing wrong and not feeling bad about it or understanding what was so wrong about it until way later on. There are some things that but there are certain things that you're I know what's wrong about this is that it broke the rules. But the rules are stupid, so I don't care. And that was often how I felt. Spoiler alert. This isn't a case where Kit breaks a rule, kind of, there's not a set rule in place, but he sees the results, and then we find out, what his goal was later, and I'll get to that. But I was just really surprised at how much responsibility he takes as well. And Derk says something about, I didn't raise you that way, or I'd hope I didn't raise you that way. And it was, sort of brought home again that to Derk, these are his kids, and he is, trying to instill them with certain, personality traits and values, which is a really surprising thing to consider when you've got, an animal hybrid. And whatever Derk is doing evidently is working because not only does Kit reconsider what he was going to do, but he also does feel remorse for it. So, you know what? good on you, Derk. I feel like that reflects really well on him. So I want to read some of the crazy shit that he talks about as they like go through the menagerie of experimental animals. So, and he has like this really sweet moment as Kirita's like, well, I bet dealing with an adolescent griffin is quite a handful. And he's like thinking to himself about what Kit was like when he was a baby and he was all first hatched and all like fluffy and just adorable, covered in little downy feathers and just really scrawny. And, you know, it's sort of a sweet parental moment. And this is really going a long way, this whole scene between the two of them, towards letting it sink in for me what his relationship with his animals is really like. Because, like I said, it's really hard for me to grasp in theory that they are his kids. But when you see the interactions and the way that they all talk together, it really starts to become more clear and understandable that the animals are just not animals that we're used to. So that changes a lot. So most of them came rushing towards the ends of their pens to meet him. Derk fed Big Hen a corn cob. She was about the size of an ostrich, and he had used the shells of her eggs as eggs for the griffins. And then he suffered himself to be slobbered on and gazed at by the friendly cows. He began to feel soothed. Bother ants, he thought. He had done bees, after all. What he needed was an animal that no one had thought of before. And the fact that he can, it's like a weird combo of wizardry and like genetics. I just don't want to know what Derk would be up to if he had been born in our world, because I feel like there's a lot of bad directions he could go in. His doing it with magic seems to not really harm anything. Like, he's taking the cells from animals to make these experiments with their consent. You know, like, this is not him cutting things up and sewing them together or doing like weird, cruel. It's all magical, like fueled by magic and with pieces that were given to him willingly by animals that like were thanking him for things. Like, there's a lioness at one point that he talks about who he saved, and he let her go eventually, and she gave him some cells as a thank you. I love when she says, "Do you know these sheep eat meat? There's one over there munching a sparrow." They do, Derk admitted. I got them a bit wrong somewhere. They moved on to the next enclosure, whose occupants stood in a row with their long necks stretched, honking sarcastically. "It sounds just as if those geese are jeering," said Kirita. "They are," Derk sighed. "I bred them for intelligence, and I hoped they'd talk. I think they may talk, but they do it in their own language." And then, why is this cage empty? The pigs? No, the pigs are free range. That should be cats. I think the ones still in there are invisible, but most of them got out through the walls somehow. I was trying to breed them for color, hoping for red or blue, but they didn't like the idea and it didn't work. But they took to invisibility, and the old female cat, who's dead now, was very proud of the fact that I took some of her cells for Elda. She used to spend hours washing Elda when Elda first hatched. They walked past giant guinea pigs and inch-high monkeys sporting in tiny trees Derk had grown for them. "Do you use cats to make all your griffins?" Kirita asked curiously as they came to the daylight owls. I love this so much. This is the sort of shit I really do want to see on camera. And he talks about using a cat instead of the lioness for Elda because he had not predicted that the first two griffins were going to grow so huge. And the first two griffins that he created were a male and female, which he had intended to be breeders together. Well, that did not go according to plan because they hate each other and want nothing to do with each other. So that's not going to be a thing that happens. So he's having to continue to like create from scratch, basically. And I find it sort of charming that they're just absolutely not interested. It makes me think of the pandas that we like put in cages together in hopes that they'll mate, and the pandas are just not interested. Pandas are on their way out, man. And like, as tragic as that is, they don't seem to be that concerned about it. They rounded the experimental beehives. Derk was glad Karita did not ask about those, and strolled on through the coffee plantation, where the owls left his shoulders and went ghosting off to hunt. And let's see. Oh, here it is. Was he growing tea? That was the other thing I forgot, because I knew that she was thinking about secret other plantation items that he could be growing from the other world. Tea is one that I always forget requires as much space as it does to grow, just quite as much as coffee. Exotic vegetables like potatoes and tomatoes, antibiotics, that stuff they made the t-shirts from that the younger wizards liked so much, cotton, that was its name. When she finally extorted the university dues from him, that's right, she would ask for all of those if he wouldn't give her a griffin. And she wondered why he was letting her know some of his secrets. There must be something he badly wanted to ask from her. So he says finally about, this is the thing that Patricia thought I was being so adorable and naive last episode, because he brings up the expendable tourists. All right, here's some shit. What did he mean? Just what he said, Karita answered. I suspect that is where Mr. Chesney really makes his money. A lot of people come on the tours who are either a trial to their families or very rich with poor relatives who wish to inherit their money, and so on. These families pay enormous fees to make sure the person doesn't come back from the tour. Derk pushed out from amongst the coffee bushes and swung round to face Karita outside the dog pen. But that's vile! And we all go along with this? And with the fact that the pilgrim parties kill an average of 200 of our citizens each, Karita retorted, dry as a snake in a desert. Given that Mr. Chesney has his wishes enforced by the demon, I don't see how we don't go along with it. Do you? So here comes Bertha. Bertha, who is now so close to my heart. Bertha, the adorable dog. Bertha is aware. When I say that, it makes me, because I've been reading the Sookie Stackhouse, I've been listening to the audiobooks, and werewolves are just called wares in that. So when I say that Bertha's aware, it makes it sound like she's a were dog, but that is not what I mean. I mean that Bertha is conscious and understands what's being said to her and around her, and has like a conscience, and it is so adorable and so like sad. At one point, Karita says something about how, like, what were you trying to do to these dogs exactly? And Derk says that he was trying for wings, but they drop off when the puppies lose their milk teeth. You should have tried reducing the length of their tongues instead, Karita said sourly, at which Bertha shot her a nervous look and moved to the other side of Derk. So he bred them for understanding, too, Karita thought. It's all right, dog, I just hate my face wet. I really like that little moment, like Bertha like licking and trying to be nice, and then this woman just being all snotty, and Bertha being like, oh God, she hates me. Poor Bertha is a nervous Nelly, and she's a little on the older side too. Like, she's really stiff and arthritic and just has a little trouble getting around, and I don't know, she just got a spot in my heart. So they go to see the horses, which seem to be totally ordinary horses, and Derk, in an effort to continue to put off the inevitable thing that he needs to ask of Karita, asks a different question. Did Mr. Chesney really mean it about wanting a god to manifest? You heard the man, and as none of the gods struck him dead, I conclude that his word is law with them too, and you're going to have to produce a god for him. Me, said Derk. Yes, said Karita. You. The Dark Lord always sees to the novelty. But I can't. No one can tell the gods what to do. Except, of course, Mr. Chesney, Karita agreed. This is something else you're going to have to fake, I imagine. I think it would be safest to invent a god that doesn't exist. It can be done with a simple illusion spell, then. Do you remember how to do illusions? I'll think up a plausible god for you and let you know what it looks like. Thanks, said Derk. Out with it, Wizard Derk. Yes, he said, it's a bit difficult. I mean, Mara's a free woman, and it's not that I mind her dressing up and seducing tourists exactly. I've done it for years, said Karita. It's only more faking if that's what's worrying you. At least Mara's not a dried-up old snake like me, and she won't need to disguise herself with 20 different glamours. It's a shame she's not being paid, she said. No, there's something else, Derk said. You and Mara are up to something, aren't you? What's going on? Karita, for once, had a little trouble controlling her face. It was something that had not happened to her for years. Mara did warn me, she thought. He's not at all the farmerish fool he looks. Perhaps she ought to revise her plans and tell him before he messed up everything trying to find out. Now, it's interesting you should say that, she began cautiously. Then, spoiler alert, Karita gets trampled by a bunch of animals. I don't know how she gets hurled into the air exactly, because that does not seem like a probable thing to have happen, no matter how, small and light you are. But Derek saw, horrified, Karita's tiny, dry body hurled into the air by a mixed crowd of galloping animals. And pretty, of course. He saw her tossed aside to land with a thwack against the paddock fence. And adorable Bertha tries to, protect her in a way, because Bertha realizes that the animals are misbehaving and should not be doing this. So Bertha comes and tries to stay near Karita to guard her, but instead of guarding them, she's sort of herding the pigs over her. So Karita continues to be trampled. She gets an arm broken, an ankle broken. There's a couple things. And Derk, who knows something about muscles and bones and whatnot because of the work that he has done putting animals together, tries to heal Karita, and she wants none of it. She just does not trust him. So finally, and she mentioned something before she takes off, but the black and white thing that had bowled her over was standing anxiously some way up the path. He was all long legs and perky little fringe of a mane. His big black and white flight feathers did indeed grow in eye-twisting zigzags. So he's bred a winged horse, Karita thought. Derk made another move to help her. She pushed him off with her good hand. I don't want to grow wings like that creature, she hissed. And you should have reported it to the university. Pretty, said Derk. Pretty's only just weaned. He was playing with the dogs and the pigs. Do let me try to set those bones. No, snapped Karita. It was horrible the way a person could be a perfectly sound old lady one second and a wounded emergency the next. She felt dreadful. She wanted, passionately, to have her own home and her own healer and a soothing cup of her own tea, and she wanted it all now. I may be injured, but I am a wizard still. If you just stay clear, I'll translocate home and call my own healer, please. So she just disappears. Derk, meanwhile, is looking at the spot where she was, and he's thinking to himself that if he had been as injured as her, he would not have been able to translocate anywhere. And we get a little taste of that later when he translocates 2 miles away from where the other winged horse is, whose name I'm forgetting at the moment. But yeah, so it's and we keep getting callbacks to the ordinary magic that Derk is not really good at, that other wizards seem to sort of take for granted and use without really being worried that any of the others can't do it, if that makes sense. They're working together to repair his house a little bit later, and they all work with one another to build the house again, giving each other instructions in magic that they just take for granted the other is going to be able to do. And Derk watches that with some envy, really, which I think makes a lot of sense. If you are somebody who is being educated in a certain field and you're really good at something that nobody else is interested in or cares about, even though it might be sort of validating because of your difference in interests that you're good at things nobody else is able to do, and so that makes you really unique and valuable, it's got to be frustrating if you're not just as good at ordinary stuff. So that gives you more of an air of being incompetent overall, when that's not necessarily true. It's just the things that other people were trained in and satisfied with weren't what interested you. And I feel a little bad for Derk, because as much as I understand the position that he's coming from, it does seem, just from our short sojourn in this world so far, that what he's good at is a lot less useful in some ways, and less practical, and just less helpful to everybody involved in this ridiculous pilgrim thing specifically. So, I mean, that is what he said too when he was thinking about the school, and how the university teaches now. Everybody learns things that are good for using during the pilgrimage. So he's right. And I guess that's a huge bummer. I feel bad for him. And he goes and yells at Pretty, who is conscious that he did a shitty thing, but not exactly he's not remorseful about it. He says something to his mom about how, I don't like Derk. And Dirk's like, yeah, and I don't fucking like you either, because you're a dick. So he goes back to the hall where most people have left, except for a couple of the wizards. And he asks where Kit is. And they say up there on the roof, and he hears the friggin' rafters creaking and groaning under Kit's weight, because Kit is large. And Kit is not listening to him when he tells him to get down. And finally, I give you 3 seconds to get down here, then I fetch you down by magic. Sulkily, Kit surged upright. Perhaps he meant to fly down to the terrace. Derk thought it more likely that Kit intended to take off for the hills, and he wondered if bringing him back with a catch spell would damage Kit's pride too badly. But he never got a chance to cast it any more than Kit had a chance to fly. As Kit braced his powerful hind legs for takeoff, the roof fell in beneath him, and Kit fell with it. So the whole roof collapses, and if you'll remember, the roof is weak at this point because the family got together and stretched the house in order to fit everybody when they came with this delegation. So it would not ordinarily be a problem for Kit to sit on the roof, I don't think. And I guess Kit is just failing to either straight up failing to listen to what he's being told, or he didn't realize how bad it was. And finally they start to, Shona, comes through, and I really like Shona. She's so competent, and I know some of the other kids are getting cranky and resentful at her constantly, telling them what to do. But honestly, it seems like somebody fucking needs to do it, and nobody else is stepping up, and good on her, I say. Finn, you make sure, and this is Barnabas talking, Finn, you make sure the sidewalls don't fall in while Derk and I see what we can do ahead. They found Kit a yard or so further on, dumped in a huge black huddle and coated with plaster and horsehair in a sort of cage of splintered roof beams, and broken marble slabs. So Barnabas says this is going to take a separate levitating spell for each beam and most slabs, I think. Finn, can you join us? Oh, yes. I see. Can do. Derk, you'll now get to see some of the techniques we use when we put cities back together after tours leave. You can take the left side, Barnabas. Derk crouched against a piece of timber and watched enviously. It was like a demonstration for students. Neatly and quickly, with only a murmur here and there, the two wizards inserted their spells under each bulk of wood or stone, and then around Kit. After a mere minute, Barnabas said, "Right, now activate." And the entire tangle of beams and marble slabs unfolded like a clawed hand and went to rest neatly stacked against the walls. So yeah, I like that little moment that we get to see, obviously putting the cities back together is going to be crucial. That is something that the pilgrims are sort of known for, apparently, is just trashing places. And also, they have to trash their own places for the sake of ambiance, which is really, we'll get to what is going on there a little bit later. So, Kit, he goes and lays down in his lair, which Derk is not really supposed to go into or just doesn't normally go into, and he does this time in order to talk to him. Thank goodness you don't seem to have killed any of the others, and you could have done. You know how heavy you are. Come along to your den and let me hose you down with warm water. Do you want to talk to me out here or indoors in private? Indoors. I want to lie down. And when we get the description of his lair too, that's also a surprise. It's not just like, a little nest. He's got paintings hung up on the walls and horsehair cushions and things like this. Talk. Tell me off. Go on. No, you talk, said Derk. What did you think you were playing at there with Mr. Chesney? No idea. I feel awful. Nonsense, said Derk. Come clean, Kit. You got the other four to pretend they couldn't speak, and then you sat there in the gateway. Why? I was going to kill him, but I couldn't manage it. Satisfied? Why? Asked Derk. He orders this whole world about, Kit roared. It was loud, even through the horsehair. He ordered you about? He called Shona a slave girl? I was going to kill him anyway to get rid of him, but I was glad he deserved it. And I thought if most people there thought the griffins were just dumb beasts, then you couldn't be blamed. I got loose by accident and savaged him. I'm glad you didn't, Kit, said Derk. It's no fun to think of yourself as a murderer. Oh, I knew they'd kill me, said Kit. No, I mean it's a vile state of mind, Derk explained. A bit like being mad, except that you're sane, I've always thought. So what stopped you? He was shocked to hear himself sounding truly regretful as he asked this question. Kit reared his head up. It was when I looked in his face. It was awful. He thinks he owns everything in this world. He thinks he's right. He wouldn't have understood. It was a pity. I could have killed him in seconds, even with that demon in his pocket, but he would have just been like food. He wouldn't have felt guilty, and neither would I. I'm glad to hear you think you ought to have felt guilty. I was beginning to wonder whether we'd brought you up properly. I do feel guilty. I did, Kit protested, and I hated the idea. But I've been feeling rather bloodthirsty lately, and saving the world seemed a good way to use it. I don't seem to be much use otherwise. And now I feel terrible about the house, too. So Derk is thinking, and he says something had been biting Kit for months. Long before there was any question of Derk's becoming the Dark Lord, Kit had been in a foul, tetchy, snarling mood. Kit, I didn't see you at all until you arrived between the gateposts, and when you were there, you looked twice your real size. Did I? Said Kit. It must have been because you were worried about Mr. Chesney. Really? Said Derk. And I suppose I was just worried again when I distinctly heard you tell me Mr. Chesney had a demon in his pocket. Kit's head shot round again, and for a moment his eyes were lambent black with alarm. Derk could see Kit force them back to their normal golden yellow and try to answer casually. I expect somebody mentioned it to me. Everyone knows he keeps it there. No, everybody doesn't, Derk told him. I think even Kirita would be surprised to know. Kit, come clean. You're another like Blade, aren't you? How long have you known you could do magic? So, what? The griffins can do magic? This is quite a fucking development, and it's awesome. But how? There's so many questions about this. And Derk is obviously you can't go to the university. But you need to learn how to use this because you could do something wrong by accident and really hurt yourself, hurt somebody else. And you should have told me this a while ago. And Kit said that he wasn't going to tell Derk at all. So I like this sort of reveal that there's really something that's bugging Kit. And it's not just the ennui that overcomes adolescence, which, don't get me wrong, I'm not discounting that. That's a real thing. But this is he's coping with a genuine change and ability that he maybe either isn't supposed to have. I don't even think that's the right wording. It's just unexpected. So let's see what's the next part. Oh, here it is. when Shauna comes and tells Derk that the young ones didn't even notice the roof come down, the kids that they were all worried about are all sitting at tables. Each of them was bent over one of the little flat machines with buttons, pushing those buttons with a finger or talon as if nothing else in the world mattered. Calette found out how to do this, Don said. She's a genius, Barnabas remarked. I never realized they did anything but add numbers. I made her 100 of them in case the power packs run out. You kill little men coming down from the sky, and they kill you, she explained. And we did so notice the roof fall in. The view screens got all dusty. Damn, you distracted me, and now I'm dead. So they're all playing video games, and they're just so distracted that they didn't even notice this, which I just found just delightful in its way. It's just such a very specific thing to have in this universe. Like, it's a fantasy realm, people living in castles, griffins flying around, but the kids are still distracted by those damn video games. So Derk tells everybody about Carita's accident, which he never got a chance to talk about, with Kit falling in through the fucking roof. And the next chapter starts off with Blade's POV as he tries desperately to learn the shit that he is supposed to be using as a guide for, like, the wizard guide for the pilgrims. I keep forgetting the word pilgrim. Thanksgiving's coming. I really need to remember it. If he had thought anything in the lists was real, he might have become quite nervous, but it was only the tours, and because he knew his own pilgrim party was the very last to set off, he knew he had 8 weeks to get ready in and did not worry very much. Besides, it was beautiful early autumn weather. Derk, of course, was having to learn the same list in just 2 weeks, as well as doing the other things a Dark Lord had to see to. Barnabas paid almost daily visits. He and Derk spent long hours consulting in Derk's study, and then later that day Derk would rush off looking harassed to consult with King Luther or some dragons about what Barnabas had told him. In between, he was busily writing out clues to the weakness of the Dark Lord or answering messages. This is just like the weirdest line, and it's been highlighted by 18 different people according to my Kindle. Parents, it seemed to Blade, always had twice the energy of their children and never seemed to get bored the way that he did. Okay, I'll give you the not get bored part because we're never given enough rest. And I say we as an adult, not a parent. And I say it with confidence because I know that parents are going to be in an even worse place, this thing I'm about to say, than me. You have to have a break and literally nothing to do to get bored. Or you have to be forced to do something and hate it and be forced for a long time to get bored. We don't get that kind of thing except from like a shitty 9-to-5 job. And that's not where kids normally see their parents at a 9-to-5 job. So they never get to see that kind of boredom. And otherwise, parents are just trying to keep their fucking shit together most of the time. But as far as the twice the energy, that is not something I ever felt as a kid. I don't know if I'm alone in that, but my parents always seemed tired. Because as an adult, you are. Because frankly, human beings are not really meant to live past the age of 40. I feel like we really have pushed our luck on that. And our bodies just start to decay after 30. They're just like, all right, I think you're pretty much done now. And we're the ones fighting tooth and nail to not die. So yeah, that line just really like caught me off guard, as not only that he thinks this, but also that so many other people highlighted it, which maybe they're highlighting it because they also were caught off guard since they didn't agree with it. But I feel like that's not the case. I just, found that one really weird. He spent most days hanging out with Kit and Don in the curving side valley just downhill from Derkholm, basking under a glorious dark blue sky. There, Kit lazily preened his feathers, recovering from his bruises, while Don sprawled with the black book in his talons so they could test Blade on the rules when any of them remembered to. They did not tell Lita or Elda where they went because those two might tell Shona. Shona was to be avoided like the plague. If Shona saw any of them, she was liable to say, Dawn, you exercise the dogs while I do my piano practice. Or, Blade, Dad needs you to water the crops while he sees to Emir. Or, Kit, we want 4 bales of hay down from the loft, and while you're at it, Dad says to make a space up there for 6 new cages of pigeons. As Kit feelingly said, it was the while you're at it's that were the worst. It kept you slaving all day. Shona was very good at while you're at it's. She slid them in at the end of orders like knives to the heart. Those days, when they saw Shona coming, even Kit went small and hard to see. These fucking lazy shits. Listen, as kids, I get it. And I'm not even like that mad at them. But God, I'm putting myself in Shona's shoes and I'd be so fucking infuriated because she's running around trying to do everything. And these assholes can't be bothered to do a thing. Oh, I have to go get down some hay and make some room for bird cages? Wow. Oh, that's going to take me 6 hours. Like, what are you kidding me? That'll take 20 minutes. Get over it. Shona knew, of course, and complained loudly. I've put off going to Bardic College, where I'd much rather be, in order to help Dad out, and the only other people doing anything are Lita and Colette. But they're enjoying themselves, Elda pointed out. It's not my fault I'm no good at things. You're worse than Colette, Shona retorted. I've never yet caught Colette being good at anything she doesn't enjoy. At least the boys are honest. So then we get this amazing bit about Colette making the magical objects, which I had thought she was making with magic, because I had forgotten that they mentioned Colette earlier making the video games. But yeah, she's making all of these magical objects with electricity so that they light up. She doesn't make the first batch light up, but it's at one point when... let's see, Dawn had said, without at all meaning to set Colette off, shouldn't the things light up or something when a pilgrim picks them up? Good idea, Colette had said briskly, and spread her wings and coasted thoughtfully away with her bundle of orbs. The next set of objects lit up like anything, some of them quite garishly, but even Colette was unable to say what they were intended to be. I call them gizmos, she said, collecting the glittering heap into a sheet to carry them back to her shed. Every day after that, the latest gizmos were more outlandish. Aren't you just getting a bit carried away? Blade suggested, picking up a shining blue rose in one hand and an indescribable spiky thing with the other. It flashed red light when he touched it. Probably, said Colette. I think I'm like Shona when she can't stop playing the violin. I keep getting new ideas. The 109th gizmo caused even Kit to make admiring sounds. It was a lattice of white shapes like snowflakes that chimed softly and turned milky bright when any of them touched it. Are you sure you're not really a wizard? Kit asked. Colette shot him a huffy look. Of course not. It's electronics. I love this whole thing. Like, just what a weird little... She's a prop master. You know, like, that's just so fun. I love it. And I like how, like, matter-of-fact Colette is. Somebody makes a suggestion to her, and rather than be like, I can't believe that you don't like it, it's more, oh, good idea. And she goes and does that. And, like, that's my favorite. Working with people on projects who are like that about it is the most satisfying thing. And I've met a few. They're rare. People who can take criticism and really hear it are rare. But it's great when it happens, and it really leads to good things. So, by that time, Derk's face had sagged from worry to harrowed misery. He felt as if he had spent his entire life rushing away on urgent, unpleasant errands. And the first thing that he has to do now is go and tell the people in town that they need to make the place look like a ruin, and he's absolutely fucking dreading it. Turns out, he doesn't have to tell them, because he gets there, and... he finds that every house is already being knocked down, and the mayor is, like, on top of shit. And I really enjoy this because I feel like it's such a trope, not only in fantasy in general, but just in a lot of stories, that the mayor is like this buffoon who has no idea what's going on and has all this power for no discernible reason other than that he's, like, good at blustering speeches and maybe somewhat handsome, or at least, like, charming in some way. But the mayor here is practical AF. The mayor left off demolishing the village shop and came to lean on his sledgehammer by Beauty's right wing. Glad to see you, Derk. We were going to need to speak to you about the village hall. We want to leave that standing if we can, but we don't want any pilgrims or soldiers messing about in it, destroying things. I wondered if you could see a way of disguising it as a ruin. How are you going to live with all the houses down? Everyone in the world knows what to expect when the tourists come through. Not your fault, Derk. We knew the job was bound to come your way in time. We had pits dug for living in years ago. Roofed over, water piped in, cables laid. Furniture and food got moved down there yesterday. Place is going to look properly abandoned by tomorrow, but we're leaving Tom Holt's pigsty and Jenny Wellaby's wash house standing. I heard they expect to find a hovel or two, but I can tell you, I didn't expect these pulled-down houses to look so new. That worries me a lot. I can easily age them a bit for you, Derk offered. And blacken them with fire? The mayor asked anxiously. It would look better. And we've told two of the skinny folks, Fran Taylor and old George, to pick about in the ruins whenever a tourist arrives, to make like starving survivors, you know? But I'd be glad if you could make them look a little less healthy. Emaciated, sort of. One look at old George at the moment and you'd know he's never had a day's illness in his life. Can you sicken him up a bit? No problem, said Derk. The man thought of everything. So yeah, the whole thing is like kind of taken care of, which God bless this mayor for like knowing that Derk was going to need some help and spearheading this whole thing. And I love when he's talking to old George. What do you think of all this? Old George shrugged. Way to earn a living. Stupid way, if you ask me. But I'm not in charge, am I? Like the whole thing. You know, it's true, though. He goes to talk to Emir, the Emir, which I don't know if, like, because Emir is not a word I'm familiar with, and I had thought that was a name until I saw the in front of it. The Emir was flatly refusing to be the puppet king the list said he should be. I'll be anything else you choose, he told Derk, but I will not have my mind enslaved to this tiara. I've seen Sheik de Troyes. He is still walking like a zombie after last year. He drools. His valet has to feed him. It's disgusting. These magic objects are not safe. Derk had seen Sheik de Troyes, too. He felt the Emir had a point. Then could you perhaps get one of your most devoted servants to wear the tiara for you? And have him usurp my throne? The Emir said. I hope you joke. At length, Derk said desperately, well, can't you wear a copy of the tiara and act being enslaved to it? What a good idea, said the Emir. I rather fancy myself as an actor. Very well. Oh, man. I had no idea that any of these magical objects was going to be a real thing. This tiara actually enslaves you? Why would they use this thing? Why has nobody thought of using a fake before now? This should not have taken them an hour of arguing to think of. Good God, guys. Everybody else is pretending to be the thing they are. Why can't he pretend to be enslaved? This should not be even up for debate. So this is when we really start to get the first indications from Derk that he's worried about what's going on between him and Mara. He's thinking about all of the ways that he can make a mer person. The question was, would Mara agree to be the mother of this new being? If he presented the idea to her as a challenge, it might be a way of bridging the chilly distance that seemed to have opened between them. So that's the first thing, and then later on, she comes by and tells them all that she has like figured out how she's going to pay. I'm going to find this section. I'm skipping over something. My bad. Derk goes to visit Kirita, and she is in a magical coma while she's healing. I did not think that she'd still be healing at this point, and I did not think it would, be... When she said a healer, when he's talking about using magic to mend her bones, I really just thought that it was going to be like, boom, done. Like, polyjuice potion type thing. Not polyjuice, Skelegro. But it is apparently going to take a while. And she's only 4 days out from the actual tour's beginning, and he still doesn't know how, like, what kind of god to summon. And she also told him she would summon a demon for him, and she's not available to do either of those things. So that's a problem. And the woman that he talks to find out what's going on with her is Kirita's healer, and is also sort of spearheading a bunch of other stuff, handing out all sorts of like emergency supplies to people who are going to be the first aid stations for the tourists. So you wouldn't believe the things those pilgrims do to themselves, everything from festering wounds to alcohol poisoning. And she basically tells him that a week to 10 days is going to be like at the very least how long this lady is going to be under. And she's super businesslike, and I'm wondering if she's going to be back because her whole attitude is drawn in such a particular way that I feel like Derk thinks of her as majestic. So I'm like, something might wind up happening with her. So this is when he tries to transport himself to Beauty. That's the name of the horse. And he's 2 miles off. So Shona suggests to Derk that if he can't get help from Karita, that he talk to Mara. And he's like afraid to talk to Mara about any of this. And part of me wonders if this like sleep is part of the plan that Mara and Karita had between the two of them. But we wouldn't know because obviously it seems like Mara's not planning on helping him. Mara arrived late for supper with 2 little creases full of her own worries above her pretty nose. She had gone very thin, and her hair had come down to hang in a fat, fair plait over one shoulder. "Sorry, I can't stay long," she said. "Now Karita's had herself put to sleep, I have hundreds of things to do for her tomorrow at the latest. I'll have to get back and start moving people from the village tonight." "From the village? Whatever for?" said Derk. "Didn't Shona tell you?" Mara asked. "You know I never liked the idea of them sitting right in the path of the final confrontation. You might be careful, Derk, but the pilgrims never are, and the village people could be hurt even in those pits. So I solved the problem by hiring them all as servants to the enchantress." "What with?" "What do you mean, what with?" "Mara, you weren't being paid for being the enchantress, and I've been fined 100 gold before we even start. We haven't any money to hire a whole village." Mara gave an odd little smile. "Oh, I think I can manage." "She's borrowed a massive amount," Derk thought. "Dear gods." And this is, for some reason, his absolute proof that Mara is going to leave him. I don't understand this line of thought at all. She's going to leave me for this person she's borrowed money from. What? Why does he think that? I don't get this at all. I guess the fact that she won't tell him, he assumes it's some like lover that's giving her the money and she's just too coy to like, but that is just such a leap to make. This dude has anxiety issues. He needs to get some therapy. And then we get a little peek at the fact that like wizard marriages don't really last. And the fact that him and Mara have been together for 18 years is like really, really rare. But oh, yikes, dude, calm down. You don't know what's going on with her. Like, maybe she's just figured out a means of, like, satisfying everybody with shit you've already got, or made a deal, or, you know, who knows? There's a million solutions to this. And then Mara says, wants to know whether Shona will come and help her with creating clothing. Colette as well, because they're both very good at inventing things. "Mum, I don't think I can come. There's no one but Lyda to look after things here." "I think I can manage," Lyda said with her beak full. "I can help here too," Elda muttered. "Everyone thinks I'm too small." Why should Lyda do everything here? What's wrong with you, Don? Or you, Blade?" Don sat with a raw chop halfway to his beak. Blade sat with a crooked one on the end of his fork. They exchanged looks of panic and consternation. Yeah, guys, just fucking pull your weight. This is going to be how it is all the time. Even if your dad's not the Dark Lord next time, y'all are going to be the ones that are going to be helping set shit up whenever. So, come on. Just do this. I'm so irritated with the two of them. And then she said, like, Mara gets up and she's like, "All right, that's settled. Colette and Elda and Shauna will come over the day after tomorrow." Breaking up the family too, Derk thought miserably as Mara rushed away. Come on. Stop it, Derk, you sad sack. So Shona, who has noticed this problem, pulls Blade aside and says Mom and Dad are terminally not getting along. They're always quarreling. You worry too much, Elda said. Wash those again, Shona said automatically. No, that's just the trouble. They're not quarreling. Dad should have exploded just now about the money, and he hardly said a word. Blade sighed, knowing his carefree time was over. I see what you mean. And that is the end of chapter 5. So, what a weird combo of situations. We have this really fantastical, like, pilgrimage that's about to happen. We have all of these, like, griffins and other enchanted experimental creatures running around and doing things. And then we have genuine, just straight up marriage trouble, which is just so unexpected. But yeah, so this is really fun. I've got no idea where it's going. I don't know how much more time we're going to see of them setting up before the pilgrimage gets started. I don't know if we're going to stay in Dirk's POV the whole time, or because, you know, obviously we started off in Kirita's POV, but it shifted to Dirk's once we met him. And I don't know if that is how it's going to stay or if we're going to go back and forth a little bit again. And I honestly kind of like to see things from the POV of a pilgrim also, because I'm just curious what the hell they're thinking. But yeah, this has been really fun. So thank you very much to Patricia for commissioning this. And I don't know if you have any questions for me before I wrap this up. I probably should have asked you that a minute ago to give you a little bit more time. But this is just such just a fun play on this whole like trope, you know, the adventure trope. And I've said it once and I'll say it again. Oh, there's an ask a question thing at the bottom there. Oh, I didn't see this. Hold on. Let me look at this. What made you think of how the griffins were, what do you think of how the griffins were made? Huh, I love that you use this, Patricia. I forgot about this function. It's really like a weird combination of things going on. On the one hand, I like the fact that he had to take actual cells from different creatures because there's like a scientific underpinning to this. On the other hand, the fact that he needs actual samples really does slow down what he's able to do to a degree. But I love the fact that he got their consent before he did this. And I like that it does not seem to cause any suffering to anybody. Like, so far as we've seen, none of the creatures that he's made have been like in pain from being created. Just, you know, just their mere existing doesn't cause them agony. Did you notice he took cells from himself and Mara? Yes. And this is because there's at one point where, you know, they're talking about talons and whatnot. And I'm just wondering, are the cells like for the consciousness, the brain, or what? Because it doesn't seem like the appearance of these griffins is anything like human. So I'm assuming it's for brain powers, but we don't really know that yet. So yeah, that's my answer on that. And I clicked done answering because Crowdcast is so fun. To make them people, they said. Right. So I assume that means like consciousness, like their brains, right? Just such a weird little idea. But I like it. Because honestly, if I were going to create a pet, I would probably want a pet that I could talk to. As much as that might irritate me after a while, I still think it would be fun. So it makes sense. And it certainly makes for an interesting story to have animals all around that are conscious, and also that like Chesney doesn't realize are conscious, which adds a different weird like underpinning of him not understanding this world. So, but that's how they're brothers with Blade, right? So it's a literal, they're brothers and sisters after all, because I was like confused by that statement last episode, and now I'm realizing, oh, that's an actual literal thing. So weird. Brothers and sisters that are a whole other species from you. Don't know how I feel about that. I feel like I'd be really weirded out by it. All right. Well, I think that's it. I'm out of time. I have, in 1 hour, the Veronica Mars episode starting. So if anybody's interested in showing up to that, please do. And I'm going to go watch that episode right now. I have not seen it yet. And thank you again, Patricia, for commissioning this. This has been really fun. And I will see you all again soon with a new episode. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.